Welcome to Getting to Know You. This Getting to Know You is maybe a getting to know you for a very few people at Stonebridge, because we're going to be talking to Jeff Tiener, and we're going to be looking back and thanking him for being our president of the Residents Association. So, saying that, Jeff, thank you for being with us, and thank you for being with us for 2 years. We are in the library for very good reason, because this is where you were the first getting to know you person.
Right.
In the first show, and it was here in the library, except we sat in the dark alcove. We didn't know about lighting, we didn't have jock. And we were just saying, as we were getting prepared for this, that we really have to thank Robin, because we had the idea to do this, but we had no idea of how to do it. Right?
Absolutely correct. That's a lot of credit for getting us going.
And so I remembered you saying to her, "What are you doing?" And what she was doing was filming the first Getting to Know You on her phone.
Yes.
Right? Her Apple phone. And then she would transfer it to her. Her daughter had
That's right,
an iPad, and she would edit it for us, right?
She took it home and did all that work on her time at home.
Right, and then came back and put it up, and then we had to teach people or tell people how they could get to see this on 1979.
Exactly.
So, thinking back on that first interview, we also, I guess COVID had started,
Yes.
and you had the idea of how do we stay in touch with people.
That was the initial thrust. We were trying to figure out more ways of communicating with residents when the regular meetings for both the Residents Association
You never got really elected by everybody with saying yes or something.
That's right. I guess that's right. I guess was it probably a paper ballot?
Yes.
I mean, an absentee.
I think it was.
Yeah, mail
Yeah.
in or whatever.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right.
And so, but at that time, we also had not been able to say goodbye to John Williams, who preceded you.
Also
And
correct.
for serving for 2 years, nobody to clap and say thank you. And so to make up for that, we got a balloon to give John to take back and hang on his door. So to start off this conversation, Jeff, you get to have one of your own.
Well, thank you very much.
So let's see, I think it'll just sort of hang here if
Okay.
you let go of it.
Okay.
I have this thing, if the camera pick it up, it says thank you. We can hang it on his mailbox so everybody knows. And what I'll do is just flip it to myself and it'll
Okay.
stay up there.
Okay.
All right. So we did say thank you to John. I think we even said maybe we'll say thank you to you at First Friday,
Yes.
and it never happened.
That didn't happen. We are having, for the first time in 3 years, an executive committee dinner on June 23rd.
Uh-huh.
And at that will be current executive committee members, newly elected executive committee members, and those people who left the executive committee during COVID and could not go to a final executive committee dinner.
Right.
So we have 17 people.
That's great.
Including John
Yeah.
and David Mulford. Actually, we have to expand, well,
Okay.
really 4 presidents
Yeah.
now, with
Right.
Julia
Yeah.
incoming
Yeah.
as part of this process. So we, the 17, are
Right.
looking forward to Ed's special efforts on our behalf.
Right, yeah. So before we let you go off, and I was hoping you might reflect a little bit about what your life was like as president. And you don't have to tell us about people that bothered you or that problems you couldn't solve. But did you have a sort of routine in your life of what goes into being the president? Because there are meetings to schedule and so on. That wasn't the only thing you were doing in your life. Can you give us a little idea of what that was like?
There were certain recurring
Yeah.
things. One of the most recurring thing was the President's Place entry every week. So I
In the
had
weekly bulletin.
in the weekly bulletin, yes, and that also was an idea that came from Robin, or that was an idea, I should say, that came from Robin. She didn't do that one
Right, yeah.
any more than she did this one, except
Right,
get us
right,
started.
yeah.
But anyway, she did have the idea, and then it was my job to come up with an idea every week. That was more the challenge. Writing the little thing that was very easy.
Right.
Once I thought of what it would be,
Yeah.
then it was quick to do. And of course, I tried to identify things that would be of interest to the community,
Yeah.
inform the community, or reinforce things that I thought
Yeah,
needed to be
I
reinforced.
thought your focusing on what was going on or what needed to be done was a helpful reminder. People need to see something that is important in several different ways or several different places. And so you picked up on that very well.
Well, they gave me the most prominent place in the bulletin,
Right.
the very first thing one saw, so that was a very nice little
Yeah.
opportunity, and I didn't want to waste it,
Right,
and so it was fun. So that was a regular thing, and I had a Wednesday deadline or a Tuesday deadline that I would try to submit it so they could get it done. And then there was a monthly executive committee meeting, and that requires an agenda the week before that meeting, so I had to be thinking about that and get that out with various attachments and things, and then to prepare for the Residents Association meetings also on a monthly basis, although for much of this time we couldn't hold them because of COVID. So that reduced that
Right.
task a little bit. And then I would keep up with various committees. I'm served on several committees, and I also followed a couple of others that I was particularly interested in. The dining task force was
Right.
something I was particularly curious about, and making sure that it got off to what I thought was a good constructive start. Excuse me, and I think it did. That has worked out very well.
yeah,
And a couple of other things like that. But then a lot of it, really quite a lot of it, is just people reaching out to me
To
with
you, yeah.
issues, questions. An awful lot of it was just information and communication. There's so much. I have had really a unique opportunity as not only the president of the Residents Association, but as trustee.
I was going to ask you about that, yeah.
Gave me insight that very few people are able to have.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't get the opportunity.
Right.
So I know much more than most residents do about the operation, and I've gotten to know the people at both Spring Point and Stonebridge, and that's a huge advantage in
Yeah.
terms of knowing what's going
Right.
on, or being able to find out the answer to what's going on
Right.
if you have a question.
But also you have an opportunity to represent to management the thinking here that they may not be able to pick up and couldn't really learn from the administrative staff here. There are certain things that they just don't know because they don't live here.
You're absolutely right, and that was one of the reasons that I was particularly receptive to approaches from residents with any kind of problem, real problem
Right.
perceived important or not important to
Right.
them. It was important enough to talk to me
Yeah.
about it, and it certainly is a useful way of finding out what's on the minds of people, and I frankly tried to pass that information along to management as a way of A, heading off problems on the one hand, but B, making their lives easier,
Yeah.
and therefore making them more willing to work with me
Right.
and do things when I was anxious to have them do things that I was
Yeah.
interested in.
And not only complaints, just things that they didn't experience, and if they had, they probably would have done something about it.
Yes.
It's interesting how different the worlds really are.
The worlds are different, the interests are generally not different, and that's what's surprising, I think, to some people, but they want us to be happy, they want us to thrive and be healthy, certainly. They want us to like dinner, they want us to, all the activities, they want to keep us busy.
Yeah.
So it's not a hard sell,
Right.
generally. There are cost considerations,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
we complain if the rates go up too much, so there are limits, and it's
Yeah.
not a complete identity of interest,
Right.
but there's a great deal of overlap.
I gather that ideas get to the executive committee, or you know about problems, and then there really are some initiatives that are taken. And I'm wondering if the technology committee is the result of some concern here, and people then stepping up that they might not have been able to figure out how to do that. But did that go to the executive committee as a problem to be solved?
It did, and it's very much a work in progress. There are sort of two aspects of it. One is the assistance to residents. And this committee now, they've got a few new members on it who are nice tech-savvy
Yeah.
people, somewhat younger.
Yeah.
And so they know a little bit more than some of the
Right,
rest of
yeah.
us do. So that's been very, very good. And Tony Glockler has been overseeing that as the liaison. He's not the chair of it, but he's the liaison, and done a good job. So they have an Apple group and
An Android.
yeah, so he can.
The other group.
The other group, right, that's right. So they can go to help both sides of the
Yeah.
fence,
Right.
depending on the type of
Yeah.
computer you
Right.
have or phone you have. So that's very helpful. And then the other thing where we're always pushing, but have less to show for it than I wish we did, is really Stonebridge, or Spring Point, sorry. The technology support
Oh,
that we
right,
get,
yeah,
that
yeah.
group. They could do so much more with technology here than we're doing.
Yeah.
And they just haven't for some good reasons, some not so good reasons
Right.
as far as I'm concerned. But anyway, we constantly push on that to get that. It will just make our lives all
Right.
more facile.
Well, we now have a very sophisticated package retrieval system.
Yes,
So,
that's right.
and it looks like people are managing that, but that was not an initiative of the executive committee.
That was
okay?
pure Brooke, I
Yeah,
think. She
yeah.
realized that the staff was going crazy with
Yeah.
packages. They were just getting inundated
Yeah.
with all of those.
Yeah.
Started during COVID, but didn't let up after COVID.
I certainly was impressed by the number of packages that were down at the desk there. I always wondered, how do they sort these out? So,
I look by in that room, package room, most nights, and I'm always surprised at how neat it is and clean it is. And there are a couple of piles for staff packages or, going somewhere else, but
Yeah.
it's very well organized.
well, I've managed to open it, but I had one day when I had 2 packages, and suddenly I put in my coat and whammo on both sides of me. I'm surprised, but I'm getting used to it. So, Jeff, there are a lot of people here since you took office in the 2 years. It's amazing how many people have moved in, and they don't know about what you did before you came to Stonebridge, and even while you were still here, I think. And I wondered if maybe your former profession also sort of helped you manage the presidency in a way. You want to say a little about what you did and what your career was?
Well, yes, I mean, there is some at least indirect relevance to
Yeah.
that. I think that's for sure. I was a labor mediator and a labor arbitrator for all of my career. Initially, with with Ingrid's husband Marv, who was representing one of the parties in disputes at the time that were causing the little state agency that I worked for all sorts of headaches.
Yeah.
But it did require an emphasis on dispute resolution, and a lot of life is dispute resolution
Right.
or avoidance, or how to cope with it.
Right.
And so work as a mediator certainly, I think, is a helpful background.
I think
or-
you probably have to have extremely good listening skills.
I think that is a
Disciplined,
big key.
disciplined listening skills.
I think that's a key. You have to be willing to put in the time
Yeah.
and can't just jump to an assumption that you
Yeah.
know all about that already.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that served you well here. You were known as a person who was willing to take time to understand what people were saying about what they wanted to have done. So,
Well, I hope that's true.
yeah. And I think that sort of goes along with what you had learned how to do.
Very much consistent.
We
with
don't
that.
all learn that.
It's not easy, and it's tempting when you think you know to sort of jump ahead, but the other person doesn't know that you know until that person's had a chance to say it and see you absorb it.
Right.
So,
And you have to keep to a schedule, I assume. And also, it probably entailed a lot of writing, so the challenge of doing the president's message was a great one, as you said, but it probably could have been worse if you had not.
yes, I've written thousands and thousands of pages in the last 40 years.
Right, yes. Yeah, I was also thinking that there were a lot of losses, and the losses were celebrated in something that you encouraged, and came out of the executive committee, is this wonderful book of the COVID experience at Stonebridge. It was something that you embraced, and it was the executive committee that took the
was.
leadership, right?
That was, you're right.
Yeah.
yes, many members of the executive committee, and you and Carol Wareheim were
Yeah.
non-executive
Right.
committee contributors to that, but that was a great thing, I think.
And I think it was helpful too, because the way that the committee set it up, everyone basically had a say in it, because they surveyed people to find out how they felt, and I think that was, and their own experiences, it was really very helpful. Maybe we don't want to look back at COVID, but the country store always has some copies if anybody's curious or wants a souvenir.
I didn't know they're still
Yeah.
extant, huh?
Yeah,
Okay.
they are, yeah. But I think it was another way that you tried to solve that problem of how do we stay a community when we really can't be with each other. And the support for, what was it called, that people could phone each other? And remember, we did a program on that?
Let's see,
Ruth Laux and Doreen Malou.
that's right.
Yeah.
What was that called? My first thought was friendly
Um,
visitors, but that's the
No,
skilled
no,
nursing
yeah,
thing.
no,
That's a
just-
different thing
yeah,
that Ruth
yeah,
does.
yeah.
But it had to do with
Phoning
phoning people,
yeah.
phone.
And
Chit chat.
yeah,
Chit
chit chat.
chat.
Oh, okay.
Friendly
Thank you,
chit chat,
thank you,
wasn't it?
Jock, who's joining in on this. But it was again a very respectful thing to do, because it wasn't calling people because they needed help. It was just to be the way, the chit chat idea that Jock just remembered was really what was behind it, the
That's
sort of
right.
talking. So, well, Jeff, it was a good experience for all of us. I hope you think it was a good experience for you.
I do.
And I have to say again, thank you, because it took a lot of your time, but I think you enjoyed it, didn't
I
you?
did,
Yeah.
I did. It was it can be very gratifying, of course, to work with people and
Yeah.
help to alleviate situations or avoid problems,
Yeah.
so that's all.
So now you'll be staying on as past president, and I guess that's a new role. You really have to let the next group find their way.
I have assured them that I will be out of the way, but I will be happy to
That's right.
help in any way that I can.
Yeah.
I have a feeling that there will be certain people, and you develop sort of a group of people who are comfortable with you, who may continue to approach me, and because I don't lose my ability to
Right.
talk to people.
Yeah. So anyway, I speak here on Getting to Know You with Jock faithfully being our videographer. We're going to represent all the residents of Stonebridge and say thank you to you today.
You know, I also should thank the two of you, because you were the two, obviously, who kept this thing going for this period of time now.
How many have we done, Jock?
Too many.
I thought it was something like 59 or something like that.
It's a good number, a very respectable number, and I certainly appreciate
But
it.
that was your idea, and you stuck with us as our, what do you call him, the impresario? Or our advisor? We always got good advice from you, so
Well-
I think it worked well, so.
Good, well, thank you, and I'm glad it did, and I
Yeah.
appreciate what you two did.
So, go on and do something fun on Tuesday, when you don't have to write a message.
Thank you.
Okay. And so that was our conversation with Jeff. We hope you feel that he deserved every thank you that we tried to convey to him. Stay tuned. There will always be new people to be on Getting to Know You.